So today I thought it would be fun to talk you guys through the process of how I create these big, messy watercolor flowers. And I will have the supplies below so you can kind of see what I'm using. But I just want you to know that in this video, I'm actually not using watercolor paper. I'm using just regular old craft paper. It's actually from my daughter's easel paper, and I want you guys to know that you don't always have to have the perfect supplies to get started working with watercolors. It's great to have watercolor paper, but you can use what you have on hand, and it's not going to be perfect, but it is going to get you through the process of experimenting and playing around until you are able to get your hands on some watercolor paper, especially larger watercolor paper. So when I create these big, loose floral paintings, I am using a variety of different sizes of round brushes. And what I like to do is just kind of expressively move my hand around. I'm creating roses to begin with, and you'll notice I'm starting with a lot of saturation in the middle. And then as that rose gets bigger and grows, the lighter the paint is, the lighter those petals are. And this just gives the illusion of some depth in the center of that flower. And then as it gets bigger and expands with those petals, those lighter petals really give that illusion of being on the outside versus that dark inside. So you'll also notice, because I'm working large, I actually really enjoy flipping my surface around. I don't do this that much when I'm working small, but when I work large, I like to create surfaces that kind of have that look and feel of pattern, something that I could use for maybe creating fabric or maybe even textiles. So I enjoy flipping that surface so that my flowers are facing in different ways. And I could probably eyeball this and do it without flipping my paper, but I've just found creatively it really helps me kind of get some diversity in those flowers. So I started with those roses, and now I'm working within that white space in between those roses. And I'm actually just kind of working off of my imagination when it comes to the flowers I'm going to fill in between. So I'm just doing some bigger petal flowers, some real kind of abstract and simple rounder flowers. You can see that I'm moving my hand in different ways. When I work big and loose and messy, I'm actually not wanting to get too detailed when it comes to the way that I create those flowers. So I really rely on the movement of my hand and expression, especially when I'm working larger. I have the ability to really put movement and energy into it, more so than if you're working on a smaller space or a smaller surface. Now, one of my tips and my tricks when I'm working this way is I start with a lighter color, and then I'll go back in and add some finer details. Often these details for me are just some lines here and there, maybe some deeper, darker saturation here and there. And you'll notice as you do that, you begin to create something that looks and feels like it has a lot of depth to it and a lot of contrast. Now, because I am not working on watercolor paper, my paper is actually soaking up that pigment right away. So I don't have as much time as I would if I were working with paper made for wet media. So I like to make use of that. I'm just experimenting and playing, but I will go back in and add layers of more saturation. So because that paper soaks it up so quickly, you have to kind of keep layering and layering up that saturation if you want things to be deeper and darker, or if you want some of those details to really pop. Now, when I work this way, I'm truly working from my brain. It's color that is in the forefront of my brain, so I tend to kind of know what colors I'm going to be doing. But I like to really challenge myself to fill as much white space as possible. So anything that's still white, I try to go back in and add something to. Even if it's a little bit of abstraction, even if it's just a blotch of color, I really like to fill up as much of that space as I can so things begin to look and feel like they are covering that surface with pattern. Now, another one of my tricks is going back in and adding leaves over the top and around those loose flowers. And I found that adding something that's more saturated with those leaves, finer lines, maybe even details here and there, really creates this interesting push and pull between just those splotchy watercolor flowers and those leaves. So it begins to create the look of layers, but it also adds this added detail, things that have a little bit of a finer quality to them. And this for me is just one of the quick ways, if you're working loose and big and messy, that you can kind of bring things together. You can really create, I think flowers are beautiful, but flowers aren't complete, in my opinion, without leaves, so, or stems, that type of thing. So I really enjoy getting a little bit more deeper, darker with my colors when I create those leaves, as well as using smaller brushes so I can get some finer lines and details here and there. So I work the same way that I did with my flowers. I kind of work my way across that surface, filling in space, filling in these lines and leaves in between my flowers. I like to angle them differently. I like to have them kind of wrapped around each other and going over the top of other flowers. And again, this is just a really easy, quick way to create that illusion of layers as well as details. Now, the last step for me when I'm working big, fast, loose, and messy is to actually continue to add just these little details here and there. And I prefer to do this after my surface has dried, only because you can get things to stand out a little bit more. They're not going to bleed or soak into that paper. So I like to add little dots to the middle or the center of my flowers. I might add a little bit of shading here and there. But this really, for me, that ending layer is my chance to get things to pop just a little bit more. And again, I'm working really loose, really messy, really expressive. Often these types of floral paintings are just for me to warm up or get an idea out or play with a color combination or maybe use it to scan and turn into something else. But this last layer is the layer that I feel like really gets things a little bit more refined. It's still messy, it's still big and pretty loose, but just these lines added here and there, some dots, a little bit of saturation here and there, maybe outlining something, really brings everything together. And this is one of my favorite ways to bring together one of those loose, big, messy paintings. So hope you guys enjoyed this. I'd really encourage you to maybe take your painting to the next level by grabbing a big piece of paper and getting big and messy.